What if the strongest mask isn't confidence but silence, and the woman who looks completely over you is actually collapsing inside? She posts, she laughs, she walks like nothing's wrong, but behind every confident step, there's a heaviness she won't let the world see, and especially not you, because to admit she's hurting would mean admitting she still cares. Most people assume women move on faster, but psychology tells us something deeper. Women often grieve in silence, in solitude, and on delay. While you've been blaming yourself, imagining she forgot you overnight, she's been replaying memories in the quiet, hiding her breakdown in the daylight. She doesn't miss you out loud, but the human heart doesn't heal by pretending. It heals by facing what it lost, and that's the storm she's avoiding. So no, this video isn't about decoding her Instagram stories. It's about understanding the emotional defenses we build to protect our pride while our souls beg for closure. If you've ever seen her smile through what you know is pain, like this video, subscribe and comment. I see beyond the mask. Now let's explore what silence often hides. Number 1. She mistook your heart for weakness, so you gave her silence instead. Right now, the wound isn't from betrayal, but misunderstanding. She didn't leave because you were cruel. She left because you were kind, in a world that told her strength is only found in mystery, not in openness. You gave her access to your soul, and she mistook it for submission. You showed her presence, and she saw predictability. She didn't run from your flaws. She ran from your availability. But here's what she never understood. Your tenderness wasn't weakness, it was restraint. You weren't soft because you had no choice. You were soft because you were in control. You had the power to detach, disappear, and play the games she expected. But you chose connection. And in a world of masked intentions that scared her more than silence ever could, a Stoic man does not chase understanding from those committed to misreading him, Marcus Aurelius reminded us. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. You offered your heart freely, but she wasn't ready to hold it with both hands. That's not your burden to carry. So now you return to your center, not with bitterness, but with clarity. You stop reacting to her curated displays of happiness. You stop decoding her posts, her likes, her vanishing texts. You recognize them for what they are, not invitations, but traps. Traps designed to test if you'll break your silence for another chance to be misunderstood. This is your turning point. The moment you go from reactive to rooted, from emotionally available to emotionally sovereign. You don't speak, you don't explain, you vanish, not to wound her, but to heal yourself. And that absence, it hits different, because it's not passive, it's purposeful. You're no longer accessible at every emotional whim. You're the man who no longer responds to manipulation with engagement. You've become the calm in the storm she tried to stir, the eye that sees everything but reacts to nothing. Psychologically, this disarms her. She expected apologies, cracks, long messages, and guilt-drenched efforts to win her back. But you offered her the one thing no one ever had: nothing. And in that nothingness, she sees what she threw away, not a boy who begged. A man who loved but refused to bleed out for someone who called his strength too soft. She'll remember this. Not the comfort of your presence, but the clarity of your silence. Because in the end, you didn't become colder, you became wiser. If you've ever stopped explaining your worth to someone who never saw it clearly, write this below. She left because I was soft, but I stayed gone because I'm strong. Number 2. Your craving was never love. It was emotional addiction. Right now, you're not missing her. Not really. You're missing the hits every post she uploads, story she shares, and silence she leaves behind. Tugs at your nervous system like a needle on skin. It's not her you're obsessed with. It's the cycle, the anticipation, the hope, the drop. You've mistaken these biochemical swings for love. But what you're in isn't romance. It's withdrawal. She became your favorite distraction from yourself. Not because she healed your wounds, but because she kept them loud enough to drown out your inner silence. Whenever she liked your message or acknowledged your presence, it was a dopamine hit. And every time she pulled away, it sent you spiraling because your emotional system became hooked on her unpredictability. But the Stoic man sees through illusion. Epictetus warned us, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. And freedom doesn't come from being needed. It comes from needing less. You've become a slave to her attention, and it's time to break that chain, not with anger, not with pride, but with discipline. Here's where the detox begins. Stop checking. You're relapsing every time you peek at her story or scroll past her name. You're feeding the illusion that something new might change your worth. You reinforce that your peace lives outside you when it never has. You don't need closure. You need clarity, and clarity comes from cutting the cord, not tugging on it. This isn't about blocking her out of spite. It's about reclaiming your space. When you remove her digital presence, you create emotional distance. And in that space, your nervous system begins to calm. The chemical chaos starts to fade, and with time, something profound happens. You begin to feel your own presence again, the one who's calm without a reply, who wakes up without checking, who no longer rides the emotional roller coaster she left behind. That man, he's not cold. He's free. And here's the psychological twist. When you stop looking for signs from her, she'll start wondering why. The silence you feared becomes the very thing that makes you magnetic, because you've shifted from being reactive to untouchable. You're no longer the man who waits. You're the man who walks. If you've ever decided to break your own cycle and reclaim your clarity, write this below. I wasn't missing her. I was detoxing from my own illusions. Number 3. Healing doesn't happen where the hurt was born. You keep trying to move on, but you're still in the room where it all broke. You're still checking her profile, still replaying old photos, still walking the same paths you once walked together, hoping pain will eventually give way to peace. But healing doesn't happen in the environment that hurt you. You can't put out a fire while sitting in the smoke. Every time you revisit her page or scroll through old messages, you're not remembering, you're reopening. You're re-triggering the wound and calling it nostalgia. You've built a shrine in your mind to something that's no longer there, and every visit keeps you from moving forward. Stoicism teaches us this brutal truth to become whole. You must let go of what made you feel broken. Seneca wrote, "No man is free who is a slave to his passions." And what's more enslaving than clinging to a digital ghost of a connection that no longer serves you? It's time to be ruthless, not to her, but to your own patterns. Block her. Not as an act of spite, but as an act of self-respect. Remove the pictures. Delete the messages, clean the digital altar where you've been worshiping your own pain, because every time you check in, you tell your nervous system, she still has power over me. And that narrative, it's the enemy of healing. This isn't about erasing the past. It's about no longer letting it define your present. You can't step into a new version of yourself while dragging the debris of an old story. You've outgrown the need for her updates. Your story now belongs to the man who wakes up and chooses himself, even when it hurts. Here's your move. Purge everything that links you to the cycle. Create distance, not just physically but psychologically, and watch how your clarity sharpens. Watch how your energy returns. Watch how the weight lifts once you stop inviting it back in. And the shift. It's quiet but undeniable. You begin to breathe differently, walk differently, think differently. Because the man who no longer clings becomes the man who finally rises. If you've ever had to cut ties with your past to rebuild your future, drop this below. I stopped revisiting my pain and started rebuilding my peace. Number 4. Discipline is the anchor when emotion wants control. The chaos doesn't come all at once. It creeps in. One moment you're calm, the next you're checking your phone again, rereading old conversations, or replaying something she said that now feels like a lie. The emotions rise like a tide. Grief, longing, rage, then shame, and you feel like a man lost at sea. But what separates a Stoic from the storm is not that he feels less. It's that he acts with more discipline. Right now, your nervous system is swinging. Your mind is looking for meaning, and the temptation is to ride those waves, to go wherever your feelings pull you. But this is where you stop. Because this is the exact moment you choose not to be ruled by the chaos inside you. The Stoics had a name for this apatheia, not indifference, but mastery. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength isn't found in waiting for her to come back. It's found in the rituals you build when she doesn't. Start with structure. Not the kind you perform, but the kind that reshapes you. Wake up at the same time. Train your body. Read what challenges your mind. Eat like you respect yourself. Meditate not to escape, but to face what rises. These things aren't coping mechanisms. They are weapons. And when practiced daily, they are armor against the emotional noise. You're not doing this to prove a point. You're doing this to protect your center, and something begins to shift. The urges come, but they no longer break you. The grief whispers, but it doesn't guide your choices. You no longer need to act on every feeling because you've chosen to build a man who doesn't collapse when the heart feels heavy. This psychological discipline is rare. It makes you dangerous in the best way, untouchable. Not because you're numb, but because you're prepared. While most men spin in emotion, you move in direction. That direction doesn't erase the pain, but it forces it to evolve into purpose. And when she looks back one day, she won't see the man who broke down when she left. She'll see the man who rose silently, because she did. If you've ever replaced chaos with consistency, speak it now. My habits healed me when my heart couldn't. Number 5. Silence wasn't weakness. It was your power unleashed. You stopped texting. You stopped explaining. You stopped trying to be understood by someone who kept pulling away just to feel powerful. And maybe for a moment you questioned yourself. Maybe you thought silence meant surrender. But then something shifted. She expected the usual. Your reaction, your need for closure, your emotional plea disguised as just checking in. She was ready for the same pattern. But you broke it. You gave her nothing. And in that quiet void, she finally heard what your words could never say. I don't need your attention to be at peace. This is where most men panic. When their presence goes unacknowledged, they try harder. But not you. You understood something deeper, that silence, when grounded in self-respect, doesn't push people away. It draws the right ones in and unsettles the ones who once controlled you. The Stoics saw silence, not as absence, but as presence intensified. Seneca said, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage, and to live without needing to be seen, that's not avoidance, it's dominance over the emotional game. Your silence isn't a tactic, it's a statement." It says, "I don't chase chaos. I don't respond to emotional bait. I don't hand over my energy just to keep someone curious." And that kind of restraint is rare. It's unnerving. It leaves a mark deeper than any clever line ever could. And what does she feel? Not guilt, not yet. What she feels is the sting of uncertainty. The space where your attention used to live now becomes a question mark. Why did he stop? Why didn't he reach out? Has he moved on? This isn't about revenge. It's about recalibration. You've turned your energy inward. You've replaced reaction with reflection. And in doing so, you've become unpredictable, which ironically is exactly what women are drawn to when it's rooted in strength, not games. How your silence becomes the storm she can't outrun. You're no longer the echo to her moods. You're the man who mastered the art of emotional distance, not to be cold, but to preserve your fire for someone who truly respects its warmth. If you've ever used silence not to hurt, but to heal and reclaim your value, say it now. My silence wasn't absence. It was evolution. Number 6. Detachment isn't cold, it's how you reclaim the frame. She used to own your focus. A glance from her could set your whole day off course. A cryptic post could keep you awake. A delayed response would light up your insecurities like wildfire. But now you've gone quiet. Not because you're numb, but because you've detached. And detachment, when practiced with intent, is power. She doesn't understand it at first. The man who once waited on her every word now disappears into his own progress. The man who once reacted now observes. The one who once leaned in now leans back with purpose. And in that retreat, something unexpected happens. She starts leaning forward. That's the paradox of masculine energy. The more grounded and self-sufficient you become, the more magnetic your presence becomes, even in absence. You're no longer broadcasting need, you're transmitting strength. She senses it not just in what you do, but in what you no longer need to do. The Stoics call this ataraxia, a lucid state of unshakable inner peace. Epictetus taught, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." When you detach, it doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop needing. You no longer depend on her approval to validate your identity. Here's the shift. You begin to build a life she no longer has access to. One rooted in momentum, not memory. You hit the gym with a new fire. You study, you work. You sleep deeper, you smile more. And none of it is for her to notice. It's for you to remember who you were before you forgot your worth in her chaos. And psychologically, this does something powerful. It flips the frame. You were once the man in orbit. Now you've become the gravity. She starts to wonder, not why you left, but why she can't stop thinking about someone who no longer reacts to her presence. This isn't manipulation. This is alignment. You're not stepping back to teach her a lesson. You're stepping forward because you finally remembered the assignment, your own life. Let her question. Let her feel the silence. Let her sit in the space where you once overextended. Because now that space is yours again, and in it, you're no longer chasing love. You're becoming it. If you've ever stopped reaching and started rising, write this below. I didn't pull away. I pulled back into my power. Number 7. Pain didn't break you. It rebuilt you. You thought you were falling apart. Sleepless nights, scrolling through memories, replaying conversations and wondering what you should have said, what you could have done. The ache was constant, like a wound that refused to close. But what if I told you, this wasn't your collapse, it was your rebirth? You see, real transformation never begins with comfort. It begins with the shattering of who you used to be. And that's exactly what this pain is. Not a punishment, but a passage out of the version of yourself that needed her to feel whole, that confused love with validation and attention with self-worth. The Stoics didn't run from pain, they saw it as fuel. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." That heartbreak. It's not your enemy, it's the fire refining you. It's the discomfort that pushes you back into discipline, purpose, and self-respect. And that's what's happening now. You're not just hurting, you're awakening. Awakening to the truth that you've outgrown the man who chased validation, the man who thought being good to her was enough to be chosen. Now the tears have dried, and in their place, routines are forming. Morning workouts, late-night reflection, saying no more often, speaking less, moving more. That's not brokenness, that's a rebuild. You've stopped asking why she left. You've started asking what this taught you. And with every rep, every journal page, every day, you get up and show up without the need for her attention. You're laying bricks. Bricks of a man who doesn't need to be remembered, because he's too busy becoming unforgettable. And when she sees you again, not in person but in presence, she won't recognize the man who once clung to her. She'll see someone forged in silence, sharpened by pain. A man who didn't use heartbreak as a reason to collapse, but as a reason to evolve. You're not the same. You were never meant to be. If you've ever felt your pain burn down your past to build your future, speak it now. My heartbreak didn't end me. It introduced me to who I really am. Number 8. Disappear and let the absence speak for you. You used to think presence was the only way to be remembered, that the more you showed up, the more she'd see your value. That being consistent, available, and always there would somehow convince her to choose you. But she didn't. Not because you weren't enough, but because your constant presence made you predictable, familiar, taken for granted. Now you've vanished. No explanations, no warnings, no subtle online reminders that you still exist. You've become the silence she never expected, and it's speaking louder than your words ever did. This is the power of strategic absence. In a world where everyone screams for attention, the man who disappears becomes a mystery, and mystery creates value. She starts to feel it, not instantly, but inevitably. The empty space you used to fill begins to echo, not with guilt, but with curiosity. Why did he go so quiet? Has he moved on? Did he stop caring, or did he never need me the way I thought? The Stoics knew this energy well. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and your absence now holds a different color." It's no longer about withholding, it's about withdrawal with purpose. You've chosen solitude, not to spite her, but to rebuild in private. And as you do, your energy changes. You stop posting to be seen. You stop checking to be noticed. You stop acting in response to her silence. You live, train, create, and focus, not for her reaction, but for your own evolution. And that shift, that's what turns you into the man who haunts her thoughts. Not because you tried, but because you stopped trying. You stopped feeding the algorithm of emotional availability. You became the algorithm she can no longer predict. This isn't about revenge. It's about restoration. You're no longer trying to be part of her narrative. You're writing your own. And if she ever thinks about you now, it's not the man who waited. She remembers. It's the man who walked away without looking back. If you've ever let your absence reveal what your presence couldn't leave this behind. She forgot me when I was near, so I let my silence remind her. Number 9. Needing no one makes you magnetic to everyone. There was a time when you thought needing her was love, that your vulnerability, your openness, your desire to stay connected, those things made you strong, and to an extent they did. But somewhere along the way, you forgot something vital. Love doesn't mean dependence. So when she pulled away, the void she left felt like suffocation. You weren't just missing her. You were missing the version of yourself that only existed through her attention. You mistook her presence for your identity, but not anymore, because now you've entered the rarest emotional state a man can embody. Self-containment. The place where your peace no longer hinges on anyone's response, where your mornings aren't shaped by her absence, and your nights don't ache with the hope that she'll return. You've stopped waiting. You've stopped needing. And that's when everything shifts. The Stoics spoke of this kind of freedom. Often, Epictetus taught, "He who is not enslaved by anything is free," and the deepest form of slavery. Needing someone else's validation to feel worthy. You've burned that chain, now you move differently. You speak less, you build more, you radiate purpose, not persuasion. You're not cold, you're complete. There's nothing to prove, nothing to chase. You show up for yourself because you've learned the most powerful person in your life isn't her. It's the man you face in the mirror every morning. The man who doesn't need permission to grow, who doesn't collapse when love becomes uncertain. And here's the twist. When you truly need no one, everyone starts feeling your pull, not because you demanded attention, but because your energy no longer leaks from a place of lack. You've sealed the cracks. And now, what once made you desperate makes you different. Even she feels it. The shift in your frequency, the detachment in your silence, the absence of your old self. The one who begged, hoped, pleaded, he's gone. And what remains is someone untouchable. Not because he closed his heart, but because he opened it inward. You don't just attract differently now. You exist differently, fully, finally. If you've ever found freedom in no longer needing to be needed, speak it now. I don't need anyone to feel whole because I already am. Number 10. Becoming untouchable is the only revenge you'll ever need. She thought you'd break, thought you'd orbit her absence, thought your identity was built around her approval. And for a while, maybe it was. But not anymore. You're no longer trying to win her back. You're not crafting messages you'll never send or watching her stories, hoping she notices your silence. You're done playing in the shadows of who you were when she left. You've stopped needing her to regret it because you've become someone who doesn't look back. This is what the Stoics meant by revenge. Not fire, not fury, but flourishing. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In your case, the best revenge is not to prove her wrong, but to prove to yourself that her leaving was the exact storm you needed to rise. You no longer want her attention. You want alignment. You want depth, peace, and growth. You want to wake up proud of who you are, not drained from trying to be what someone else wanted. You want a life that doesn't require explanation or applause. Just progress. And here's the beauty. Your glow-up isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It's in your new posture, the clarity in your speech, the silence in your restraint, the way you move with purpose now instead of emotional confusion. She'll see it eventually, not through a message or a meetup, but through the air around you. Through the fact that your name still lives in her head, but your attention is nowhere to be found. You're no longer the echo. You're the presence, and your absence from her world becomes the one thing she can't control, can't dismiss, can't replace. This is Stoic vengeance, evolution without noise, power without performance, becoming so undeniably whole that she has no choice but to wonder how she ever thought you were the weak one. Let the world talk, let her watch, but you walk. If you've ever turned pain into power and silence into transformation, declare it now. She thought I'd break, but I chose to rise instead. You started this video thinking she had moved on without a scratch, but now you see the truth. Some wounds are hidden, and the most painful heartbreaks are the ones endured alone. She may never say it, she may never admit it, but your absence lingers not in her words, but in her insomnia, in the way she avoids your name, in the things she posts, but doesn't truly feel. She didn't lose you the day you walked away. She's losing you slowly every time she pretends she never loved you. And while the world sees strength only, she knows the weight she's carrying in silence. If you've ever felt like the unspoken pain was real, like this video, subscribe and comment. Some hearts break quietly. Be kind. Be wise. Because what looks healed on the outside is often still bleeding within.